Today, I want to talk about the importance and power of language in lessons. More specifically, the use of men and guys for leaders and women, ladies, girls for followers. I've had people say it's easy. Yeah, okay, it's important, but who cares enough about it? It doesn't affect a lesson unless there's a dancer who is not in the gender traditional role. Well, I strongly disagree with this. There are so many limitations to the language, and we are doing a disservice to our scene if we don't grow with time. We say we're striving for equality in our society. Well, all good habits start at home. And for many of us, salsa, bachata, and kizomba, they're our second, if not our first home. So I know there are plenty of teachers who take the route of, well, most leaders are men, most followers are women. There's really not much scope or need for me to change. So if a teacher is using men, guys as a synonym for leaders, and women, girls as a synonym for followers during their lesson, even when there are all men leading and all women following, it forms part of the tone of the lesson. It tells people that this is what is expected and that any exceptions to this are just blips. They're not the norm. But this is outdated, and it's just an excuse as far as I'm concerned. I'm not aiming to go all Gen Z on you here, but we need to move with the times. If we have a look at some of the big data, let's say in the UK, according to gov.uk, only 16.5% of engineers in the UK are women. According to the NHS, only 12.5% of surgeons in the UK are women. According to the Civil Aviation Authority, only 6.5% of pilots in the UK are women. So let's look at engineers and pilots. The UK is massively trying to push that this role should be accessible to both men and women, to everyone. And how are they doing that? Well, the first thing they're doing is they're trying to degender it. They're not referring to it as a man's role. They're celebrating that women can join or make a positive impact on the industry just as much as men. And we still have these tiny figures of 6.5 and 16.5% of the industry or of pilots and engineers respectively are women. It's really small. But what's happening in our salsa, bachata, and kizomba scene? We are clinging to outdated culture. In a recent lesson I was in, the teacher was talking about guys and girls, and then at one point turned to me and said jokingly, I mean you as well, Bobby, you're an honorary man. To which I responded something along the lines of, I don't want to be an honorary man. I want to be a leader. And this was just a playful interaction. I get on well with this teacher, and neither of us was trying to upset the other. But it still felt difficult to push back and not just smile and say, "Oh, yeah, haha, thank you." It took a little bit of wait. Why do I have to be a man to be in this role? That doesn't okay. Anyway, as the lesson continued, his language did change a bit too. Leaders was used a bit more than guys, and it's not that I don't think men are great, but me being a leader, am I less of a woman as a result? Of course not. The other thing we have then is teachers often say, I'm used to it. But you know what I mean. So what is the problem? You're making a massive deal out of something that is just a word. Words have power. And I know this is pretty embedded for some people. They've been teaching for years or they've come from a very gendered traditional background. And I'm not trying to deny that for anyone or say that they should change just because I'm suggesting they should. But then again, I also think I'm used to it is not good enough. Are those people telling me that they just don't want to change? Because we are all capable of change. Every single person on the planet is capable of change. It's just a matter of whether we are choosing to change or not. And yeah, it takes a bit of effort. We get it right and wrong and wrong and right, and it doesn't happen overnight, but it's a choice. Okay, so tech is a great example for showing the change we can make in our language. And let me give you a really, really simple example, one that you don't even really think much about. So we used to text, right? So before the rise of social media and all these other platforms, we just had cellular. We used to make phone calls and send texts. Texts were normal for us. And anybody born after 2010 may never use the word, but we used to say things like, Drop me a text or I'll send you a text. It was very common. IM came in for a while, and then with the rise of social media, text became message. Now message is common. Let me drop you a message. Just message me about that. It's not a massive change, not at all. But the point is, if we as a group of people can change our language implicitly without consciously realizing we're doing it or consciously trying to do it, there is zero reason why we cannot consciously change our language and intend to change our language. Surely, if we want to care about opening up, leading, and following to whoever wants to do either role, we can choose to do that. And if we can choose to do that, we can choose to change the language in our lessons. It may not happen overnight. We may need to pick someone to say, hey, would you remind me? Maybe if you're co-teaching with someone, you can say, look, let's try and do this. Just give me a wink or a nod or say something if I've made a mistake and I've used the gendered role again. Or you may just have a little notes that you take. I don't know, but it's a choice we can make. So the limitations of language in lessons, it's really big. We bring in a whole load of culture with us when we bring in gendered roles into dancing. Now, this was traditional. If we go back far enough, it was a way of communicating between the opposite sexes. But today, it's a form of expression, connection. It's a form of fun. It's a hobby. It's a stress reliever. It's a happy place. It's so many different things to so many different people. And I would love to one day say we are in an equal world, but we're still far from it. We just look at just women and men, from female sexualization to impossible standards of beauty to aging, from male aggression towards women and girls to taxes on menstrual items. We are still living in a patriarchal society, and that serves a small number of men and seeks to limit women and minorities. So these traditional roles based on biological sex extend well beyond dancing. I know this may sound tiring to some people, but it is still common for people to generalize, to assume that women ought to be in the home and men at work, because men deal with pressure in the workplace better. That women are less able to be engineers, let's say again, because their brains don't deal with numbers in the same way that a man's does. Or that a man is less suited to being a full-time dad, because men aren't as nurturing as women. And these mindsets feed into wider, more generic points of view that men are the decision makers, the breadwinners. We still call it mankind. That women are more submissive, less free thinking beyond the home. So when you bring men, guys, as leaders and women, girls as followers into the dance space, you bring all of that gender bias with you into that room. So whenever I'm leading, it's quite common on any given night, let's say it's a lesson, it's pretty common for a woman to say to me, gosh, you're brave, or I really wouldn't have the brain space or capacity to lead. But that's just a gender bias. Initially, I thought there was nothing brave about it. I just wanted to dance with my girlfriends. But then I was thinking about how all of this gender bias permeates through our dancing and realized that actually what we are saying is men, you are the leaders. You make the decisions about the music, the moves. Women, you're the followers. You listen quietly and interpret what your man is telling you. So now I understand why these women tell me it's brave to lead. Because the system that we dance under is telling women to stay in a certain lane. And it's telling men to stay in a certain lane. And most teachers, by using guys, men, women, girls, instead of leader and follower, are perpetuating that system. It puts men into a leader box, women into a follower box, because that is their role, allegedly. But leading and following are two skills of a dance. They have nothing to do with our biological sex. They are two different skills, and they complement each other. It felt a bit, it's difficult to describe. It felt bewildering, confusing. Well, we have like 50 words in the English language for the word confused, right? It felt one of them. Perplexing, maybe. When I asked a woman to dance recently, and she responded with, "Are you a man?" And I again insert confusion word here. So I said, "No, I'm a woman." Her response was, "So you're pretending to be a man?" I said, "No, no, I'm just leading. Do you still want to dance?" And she responded, oh, okay. Uh-huh. Yeah, sure. To me, it felt like she was saying that I was less of a woman for leading, that there was something manly about me. I brushed it off because I get to decide how I feel and who I am, not somebody else. But it still didn't feel very comfortable. And this happens both ways. It's not just women leading. So during a social, again, this was, I don't know, about a month ago, someone had seen me leading two men, one after the other, and both of them were following. I was leading, and a woman comes over to me and she says, indicating to my friends, so which was the better woman? Again, insert perplexing word here. I was like, so you mean just dancing just now? She nods along, yeah. I said, oh, those two men were following, and they were both really fun dancers. Thanks for asking. It was a bit strange, right? And this just shows how engendered the dance roles are and how silly it is to do this. It makes zero difference what someone's sex is or what their identity is to whether they could, should, would like to lead or follow in salsa, bachata, kizomba, swing, anything else. So, my challenge to you is this: the next time you're in conversation with someone and they drop in a he, men, guys, and a she, women, girls, when they're referring to a leader or a follower, perhaps suggest to them that maybe they could use leader and follower, just to be more inclusive. Why not? For fun. This might help others in turn to start thinking about the language they're using and why they're using it. And then we can start to see a ripple effect so that in our dance spaces, in our lessons, that we go beyond a social structure and people can dance whatever they want to dance. Thank you for listening to the Empowered Dancers podcast. If there's an aspect of the dancing you would like to hear about, or a particular teacher you would like to hear from, drop me a message and I will try to make it happen. Make sure you subscribe to get every episode as it comes out. Thank you so much for the comments and questions you are already sharing. I really, really appreciate it, and I look forward to serving you in next week's episode.